No one came to my book club. I read the book anyway. This is not for inspiration. We look at why this book exists, how it unfolds, and what it leaves behind. Let us begin. Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. On a hot evening in July, a man picks up an axe. He is not acting in rage. He is testing a theory. He believes humanity is divided into two kinds: the ordinary, who must live in obedience, and the extraordinary, who have the right to step over moral law in order to reshape the world. The question forming in his mind is simple. Am I a trembling creature, or do I have the right? In a few hours, a line will be crossed. A door will be opened that can never be closed again. We are walking into a mind that has decided to test whether it is human or something else. The world that demanded this book was one of ash and damp stone. In the 1860s, Saint Petersburg was a city of contradictions, an imperial capital built on a swamp, filled with the stench of cheap vodka and the sound of coughing. It was a place where the old Russian soul was being eroded by new, cold ideas from the West. In 1849, Fyodor Dostoevsky stood in a freezing square, waiting for a firing squad. He had been reading forbidden books, discussing ideas. The Tsar's sentence was death. At the last second, a messenger arrived. The sentence was commuted to 4 years of hard labor in a Siberian prison camp. Dostoevsky spent those years chained to murderers. He slept on wooden planks. He watched men flogged. He carried one question out of that camp: what happens to a man when he believes he is above moral law? In the 1860s, young Russians were discussing nihilism, the rejection of all authority. They were reading utilitarianism, the idea that if an action benefits the majority, it is moral. Clean theories, abstract ideas. A new question had forced its way into the light. If traditional morality is merely an old superstition, what governs the hand of man? Dostoevsky himself knew the inside of a pawn shop. He knew the shame of handing over a dead father's watch for the price of bread. He saw the pressure of a world where the poor were seen as lice and the powerful were seen as gods. Meanwhile, the streets boiled with talk of rational self-interest. Dostoevsky looked at these theories from the cold dirt of his experience. He asked, if you tell a starving, brilliant student that morality is a prejudice, that the soul is a myth, what will he do? The answer was Crime and Punishment. It is not a detective story. It is an autopsy of a man who tried to become God. The architecture of the text is a slow, descending spiral, 6 parts and an epilogue. While the title suggests balance, the movement is heavily tilted. The crime is a frantic, feverish event that ends before the first 100 pages. The punishment is the long, agonizing rest of the journey. The central movement is driven by a single theory. Raskolnikov divides humanity into 2 groups: the ordinary, who must live in obedience, mere lice, and the extraordinary, the Napoleons, who have the right to step over corpses to bring a new idea into the world. But who is this pawnbroker? Her name is Alyona Ivanovna. She is not merely old and greedy. She is, in Raskolnikov's mind, a symbol, a louse. She hoards wealth her niece Lizaveta will never touch. She thrives on the desperation of the poor. To Raskolnikov, she represents everything his theories despise, a useless life that drains value from the world without contributing anything in return. His reasoning is cold, mathematical. If one worthless life could be sacrificed to fund 1,000 noble ambitions, his own education, his sister's freedom, His mother's security? Is that not morally justified? The utilitarians would say yes. The nihilists would shrug. Raskolnikov tells himself he is merely being logical. But logic alone does not drive him. The letter from his mother arrives like a knife. Dunya is selling herself to Luzhin, a man who will own her like property. His sister will be stepped on so that he might rise. This knowledge burns. If he can prove himself extraordinary, if he can cross the line, he can save them. The theory and the love become tangled. He will kill not just a principle, but for the people he loves. On a July evening, he climbs to her apartment. He has rehearsed this. He has brought a pledge to distract her, a fake silver watch. She turns to examine it in the light. Her back is to him. The axe is beneath his coat. He has one moment to decide if he is a man or a theory. The axe falls. Once. Twice. The pawnbroker crumples. He fumbles for her keys, her purse, but his hands shake. Then, a sound. The door had not been fully closed. Lizaveta, the simple, kind half-sister, the innocent who never harmed anyone, stands in the doorway, her Bible pressed to her chest. She cannot scream. She can only stare, and he realizes the theory did not account for her. The axe is raised again. The perfect crime fractures immediately. He barely touches the money. He cannot carry it. He washes his hands, his boots, the axe, but the blood is already inside him. He falls into a fever, unconscious for days. When he wakes, the city is talking. Everyone knows about the murder. And everyone, the landlord, the police clerk, strangers on the street, seems to be watching him. The crime is over. The punishment has just begun. The rest of the novel is not a chase, but a collapse. Enter Porfiry Petrovich, the investigating magistrate. He is not a hunter in the usual sense. He has no witnesses, no physical evidence, no confession. But he has something more dangerous, patience and a deep understanding of the guilty mind. He invites Raskolnikov to his office, not to interrogate, but to talk, to circle, to smile. He knows that a man who believes himself extraordinary cannot bear to be thought ordinary, even by his pursuer. Who murdered the old woman? Porfiry asks, but never directly. Instead, do you believe in the resurrection of Lazarus? Do you read the newspapers? What would a man do if he had committed the perfect crime? He plays cat and mouse, except the mouse knows he is being played and cannot stop coming back for more. Raskolnikov returns to Porfiry's office again and again, drawn by the need to prove he is not afraid. This is how Porfiry catches him, not with handcuffs but with psychology. But Porfiry is not Raskolnikov's only visitor. There is another. Sonia Marmeladov. He meets her through her father, a drunkard he encounters in a tavern, a man who has spent his family into starvation. Sonia, to save them, has sold herself. She is 17. She is pure, and she has committed no crime, yet carries more suffering than any murderer. Raskolnikov is drawn to her. Not as a man is drawn to a woman, but as the damned are drawn to the innocent. He asks her if she could kill Luzhin, the man who would destroy her family, to save everyone she loves, would she? She recoils. Why do you ask such things? He realizes she would never kill. She would only suffer. And in her suffering, she has found something he cannot find. Peace, he confesses to her. Not to Porfiry, to Sonia. In her bare room, he falls to his knees and tells her everything. He expects her to see his greatness, his theory, his right to kill. Instead, she weeps. What have you done to yourself? She cries. Not to them, to yourself. She sees no extraordinary man. She sees a soul destroyed, and she tells him, go to the crossroads. kiss the earth you have stained, and confess to all the world. But there is another mirror, Svidrigailov, a wealthy man, a sensualist, a predator. He has heard Raskolnikov's confession. He was listening through the wall, and he offers a different path. He too has stepped over every line. He feels nothing. No guilt, no love, no fear. He is the image of Raskolnikov's theory made flesh, a man who has become truly extraordinary, truly beyond good and evil, and he is utterly, completely empty. Svidrigailov does one good thing before the end. He sets Dunya free from Luzhin, ensuring she will never have to sell herself. But it changes nothing. He feels no redemption. He feels nothing. In a cheap hotel, in the rain, he puts a bullet through his brain. The extraordinary man, in the end, cannot live. There is nothing to live for. Raskolnikov watches Svidrigailov's path and recoils. He cannot become nothing. He returns to Sonia. She reads to him the story of Lazarus, the man who was dead 4 days, whom Christ raised from the tomb. "Dost thou believe this?" she whispers. He does not answer, but he stays. He goes to the crossroads, as Sonia commanded. He kneels in the mud and snow and kisses the earth. People laugh. They think he is drunk. He does not care. He has murdered 2 women, and the only way back to the human race is through this public shame. He walks to the police station. At the station, he learns Svidrigailov is dead. And something breaks loose. He sees Porfiry, who already knows, who has always known. "Who murdered the old woman?" Porfiry asks, one last time, and Raskolnikov answers, "I did." 8 years in Siberia. His mother dies of grief. Dunya marries a good man, Razumikin, Raskolnikov's loyal friend, and Sonia follows him to the prison camp, waiting outside the walls in the freezing cold year after year. The text moves from the pride of the intellect to the humility of the heart. The central driving force is not the chase. It is the need to belong to the human race again. And slowly, in the frozen dirt of a prison yard, watching Sonia shiver at the gate, he begins to understand. He was never extraordinary. He was only human. And that, finally, is enough. The book assumes a reality where there are laws higher than the ones written in books. This is where the tension lies. On one side is Raskolnikov's claim that he is extraordinary, that he has the right to stand outside human law. That value is found in the usefulness of a person's life to history. Blood is a cheap price for progress. "I didn't kill a human being, but a principle," he tells himself. But here the argument strains under its own logic. If Raskolnikov were truly extraordinary, he would feel no more guilt than a man stepping on an ant. The tension is not logic against emotion. It is pride against humility, self-exaltation against shared humanity. Raskolnikov wants to be Napoleon. He wants to stand above the suffering of ordinary people, but he cannot stop feeling their pain. He cannot stop needing Sonia, the very thing his theory despises. She is sacrifice. She is faith. She is everything his pride rejects. The work holds coherently because it refuses to blink. It carries the weight of Raskolnikov's crime until it crushes him. It suggests that the principle he thought he killed was actually the only thing keeping him alive. If there is no soul, if there is no God, then Svidrigailov is right. Suicide is the only logical end. But Raskolnikov chooses confession. He chooses suffering. He chooses, in the end, to be human rather than right. Dostoevsky did not just write a novel, he released a fever into the intellectual bloodstream of the West. In the winter of 1866, Readers in St. Petersburg recognized the Haymarket streets, but they also recognized the rot in their own basements. The book was a sensation because it was a mirror, one that showed a generation of new men that their rational theories were merely old demons in modern clothes. The extraordinary man did not stay trapped in Raskolnikov's cupboard. Friedrich Nietzsche found in Dostoevsky the only psychologist from whom he had anything to learn, a fellow traveler who had looked into the abyss of the human will and didn't blink. Robert Louis Stevenson read it and felt his own soul split in two, giving us Jekyll and Hyde. But the legacy was darker than literature. The Napoleonic right to step over corpses, to sacrifice the few for the progress of the many, ceased to be a student's fever dream and became the blueprint for the 20th century. Dostoevsky was a prophet who saw the slaughterhouse at the end of the road. He understood that when you remove the superstition of the soul, you do not find freedom. You find a world where everything is permitted and nothing is sacred. What Raskolnikov did with an axe in a cramped apartment, entire regimes would later do with industrial efficiency. They too believed that blood is a cheap price for progress. They too found that the principle they killed was the only thing that made them human. We live in an age that Raskolnikov would recognize, an age of cold calculations and rational self-interest. We return to this book not for the plot, but for the warning. It reminds us that no matter how brilliant the theory or how useful the outcome, the weight of a single life cannot be balanced on a ledger. Every era produces its own Napoleons. Every age tries to justify the axe, and every age must eventually face the silence of the door that can never be closed. We return to the garret, the room that was a cupboard. We see it now not as a place of poverty, but as a crucible. The thought that Raskolnikov nourished there has been tested, and it has been found wanting. But that is the beginning of a new story, the story of the gradual renewal of a man, the story of his gradual regeneration, of his passing from one world into another, of his initiation into a new unknown life. That might be the subject of a new story, but our present story is ended. Crime and Punishment, Epilogue. It is not a happy ending. It is a true one. Raskolnikov does not find God in a flash of light. He finds him slowly, in the frozen dirt of a prison camp, through the eyes of a girl who never stopped loving him. The man who has a conscience suffers whilst acknowledging his sin. That is his punishment. The man who sought to be a god found his salvation in becoming a man. Crime and Punishment is not a warning against breaking the law. It is a warning against breaking yourself.